We have with us Mr. Carl Long. Is he on? Is Mr. Long there? Carl Long, Mr. Long? Hello, Mr. Long. Can you hear us?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Thank you. Thank you for joining us tonight.
Absolutely. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you for your interest in the position of the interim fire chief of South King Fire. Board members are going to ask some pre-written questions here in open session and then in executive session. Please be concise as possible. We don't want to short you any time, but we're running just a little bit behind, but please be concise as possible and answering questions in order that we can provide equal time to all candidates. My name is Greg Bruce. I'm the current chair for the board. On my left here, or your right, is Commissioner Bill Fuller. To my right, your left, of course, Commissioner Carolyn Medino, and then my far right is Commissioner Bill Gates, and we have online Commissioner Craig Burrs. He's out right now. So with that, I'm going to begin with the interview questions with Commissioner Gates.
Thank you. What makes you unique for the position of interim fire chief of South King Fire?
Thank you. So, what I believe that makes me unique is not only just my life experiences, but also my experience in the fire department in general. And so, the city that I come from, the city that I grew up in, the city of Vallejo, is I started out as a firefighter paramedic in the city of Vallejo. And once I started, the city was already experiencing some financial difficulties. So I teased my city council, my city manager. In the first 7 years that I was a firefighter in the city of Vallejo, they hired more city managers than they did firefighters. So I was the most junior firefighter for the first 7 years. And so having said that, we were on a 48-96 schedule, 2 days in the fire station, 4 days off. But because we didn't hire any firefighters because of the financial difficulties we were going through, I was on a 96-48 schedule. So I worked a lot away from my family. I've always been a glasses half full kind of person, and I got a lot of experience in that first 7 years as a firefighter. The city of Vallejo, the city that I work for, is unique in the fact that in that first 7 years that I worked as a firefighter, the city filed for Chapter 9 bankruptcy, which was the largest bankruptcy filing from a city in the nation. And during that time, I chose to get involved in the labor side of things, and I ended up being selected as union president during the bankruptcy as the most junior member of the organization, and chose to lead the organization through bankruptcy. And we were successful in being the first labor organization through bankruptcy to come out with the contract that I felt was fiscally sustainable for the city. And so during that process, I learned more about city dynamics, city government, city finances that I ever thought I would learn before, about unfunded liability and just the budgetary process as a firefighter. Um, at the time, being a labor leader, I had a lot of people surrounding me. I had the International Association of Firefighters, the president from Washington, D.C., the California Professional Firefighters. However, it was uncharted territory, so there was not a lot of past practice to be able to rely on. So I learned a lot about the political side of being a firefighter as well as the labor side of firefighters. And so that catapulted my career, to be honest with you. So in that time, they closed half of the fire stations in the city I worked for. We had 8 fire stations. We went down to 4 fire stations. So promotional opportunities were basically non-existent because of the reduction in staffing. The first promotional opportunity that I had to take was a fire captain, and that was about 9 years on the job. And so because there hadn't been a lot of promotional opportunities, I tested with, I think it was 26 or 27 of my peers at the time. And I was fortunate to come out number 1 and was promoted to fire captain. I stayed fire captain at the station that I worked at, was one of the busiest stations in the department. Again, the nature of our bargaining unit was that even though I was a fire captain, I was still junior. And so that 96-48 schedule stayed exactly the way it was. So I got a lot of experience as a fire captain, and I was really appreciative of it. After that, I was able to test for battalion chief about 5 years later. And I was successful and able to come out number 1 as a battalion chief. And at that time, we had another fire chief come in from the outside, came by way of Los Angeles Fire Department, and came in with a lot of knowledge. He was the one that promoted me to battalion chief, and I made it very clear to him that I was interested in being a fire chief in my career. And so I stuck by his side, and I stayed in the training division. I was on the 40-hour work week with him, and I learned a lot. I learned a lot from him. And so it was a really great opportunity for me. And he then promoted me from battalion chief to deputy chief fairly quickly. And I got to serve under him as a deputy chief and learn a lot for about almost 3 years. And then he had left, and then I was fortunate to be promoted to fire chief. And so what I would say about that is, as great as my mentor was, coming from a different agency, coming from an outside agency, which is all we had experienced in my organization. Just a little history for you. My organization that I grew up in existed for about 150 years. I was the longest tenure fire chief. So we did not promote from within. It just did not happen. It was kind of an us versus them mentality. And so I had been through, in my 20-year career, probably 10 fire chiefs. And so he had stepped on what I call some cultural landmines right out of the gate, and it just it didn't really pick up from there. And so by the time that he left, our morale was at a low. And so I took over. We had about a 30% vacancy rate when I took over as fire chief. And so I had to do some rebuilding, much like I had to do during the bankruptcy as union president, just from the management side of things. And so with the collaboration of city council, city management, the community, and leaders in the organization, informal and formal leaders of the organization, we were able to be successful. And by the time I left, the vacancy rate was, I think I had 1 firefighter vacancy, but definitely a unique career that I've had over the last 20 years.
Thank you.
Who is your ideal leader and why?
My ideal leader and why? That's a great question. I would like to say John Wooden. John Wooden. So UCLA basketball coach, maybe you all know, maybe you don't know. Great leader. A book that I would give to anybody that wanted to be future leaders in my organization, that I was given to a predecessor fire chief for me, is John Wooden, A Life on and Off the Court, I believe is what the title is. And just an absolute phenomenal leader, phenomenal individual, phenomenal servant leader, coached his way through many national championships with UCLA. But John Wooden is definitely somebody that I look up to and try to idolize as far as leadership goes.
Thank you.
Please describe your experience as a fire chief or chief executive officer of an organization.
Yes. So the organization that I took over, obviously being the largest municipality, filed for Chapter 9 bankruptcy, that comes with a stigma attached to it, for sure. And because of that, finances were always tight. Ever since I was fire chief, and probably my predecessor when I was deputy chief, I think we always operated on what we call a flat budget. They didn't give us any money. And so that's what I was used to dealing with, is um, we had to be very, very creative with the budget process and how we were going to move forward. I'm an individual that does not like to stay still. It was tough for me to make the transition. As far as where I come from, when I promoted up through to become chief, deputy chief, by far, I was at a young age for sure, and fire chief for sure. And so it's sitting still is not something that I have grown accustomed to. But going through that process of trying to figure out where we could shift resources, shift money, allocate resources, has been absolute delight for me. It's very, very intriguing for me. And so being a leader of the organization that I grew up in and being very young, it just inspired me to constantly evolve, adapt, overcome, be creative, be inventive, to progress the organization moving forward. And that's what I've always tried to do, is just move forward as best we can, move forward, make it better for the community that we represent.
What is your philosophy about labor? No, that's not mine. What have you done to improve your knowledge in the last year?
Ooh, the last year. That's a great question. I have done a ton, not necessarily the last year, a ton of self-reflection, stepping away from the fire service. It gave me just a rejuvenation of what my love and joy for the fire service is, and representing individuals, the community in general. And so I have done a ton of different learning aspects, I guess you would say, and that would be from classes that I have taken, books that I have read, online, social media. It will really, really wrap your head around it. But podcasts, the whole nine is. I have done a ton of different research and soul searching over the past year that has been extremely instrumental for me, and just know that I am reinvigorated, and I am ready to get back out to the organization that's going to accept me. And I have a lot of ideas, I can tell you that for sure.
Thank you.
What is your philosophy regarding labor relations?
It's absolutely paramount, to be honest with you. I'm a former union president. Like I said, I went through what no labor leader in the country had gone through. And so I come from a family of firefighters. Just to tell you, I'm a third generation firefighter, but my mentor, the one that's most important to me, is my uncle. And he was the one that got me into the fire service. He was a labor union leader, the president of his organization that my grandfather worked in for 14 years. And so labor is something that is near and dear to my heart. And it should be near and dear to all of our hearts, to be honest with you. If you go back to the labor, just the organized labor movement in general, whether you're in labor or not in the United States, you probably benefit from organized labor. And so labor management is key. And so from the organization that I came from, there was only one individual that was not in the labor union, and that was myself as a fire chief. And so coming from a union president, to be able to step out of that role as early as I did, I understood that. But immediately I established a labor management committee and just had that open line of transparency and communication with labor, which, the community gets confused a little bit, at least the community I came from, they believe that there's a little bit of a distinction between labor and the firefighters. But with the way I grew up, there's not really a distinction. They're all a part of labor in some form or fashion. Whether you have a chief officers labor union that's distinctual from the firefighters union, the way I grew up, having labor management at odds is not beneficial to the citizens that we serve first and foremost. So establishing that relationship, and I was extremely successful as a fire chief because I had that background and I had that relationship and I had that understanding. So I believe that is really paramount to be successful as an organization.
Thank you.
Do you have experience in interest arbitration?
So where it came from, we had binding arbitration. I don't know if that's similar for what you deal with in the state of Washington. So we had binding interest, collective bargaining. And so what it was is there was no, what they call it, there was no split the baby. It was one side or the other. Is whoever presented the best argument, that's the way that it went. Inability to pay was the one that would, it was basically your get out of jail free card. If the city could show that they had the inability to pay with a labor agreement, then that was it. That was a done deal as far as binding interest arbitration. But I have a significant experience in binding interest arbitration. So that existed. It came out of the largest strike. The city that I work for was not only the largest municipality to file for Chapter 9 bankruptcy, they were the first public safety union to go on strike in 1969. And so police and fire went on strike in 1969. But the result of that strike is that they got binding interest arbitration. And so I'm extremely familiar with that and extremely familiar with negotiations. Like I said, not only was I instrumental in the first labor agreement through Chapter 9 bankruptcy, but my city management team was actually very, very willing to allow me to negotiate with our labor union. And so I successfully negotiated probably the longest labor contract as fire chief with our labor union within the last 15 years. And so I have a ton of experience on the labor side of things with stuff like interest arbitration.
Thank you.
Do you understand the difference between position-based and interest-based bargaining?
Position-based versus interest-based? No. That would be something that's new to me.
Thank you.
Based on your knowledge of South King Fire and its demographics, identify the program areas you would focus upon and describe how you would undertake the tasks of an interim fire chief during the first 6 months of your job.
Wow, that's a big one.
Long one.
Yeah, so from what I gather, and it's really tough, you can't understand the culture of an organization until you're actually inside of it, and I say that because I've been through so many fire chiefs that come from the outside. So I do say this somewhat anecdotally from what I've seen from the internet, but being a fire district that has 7 fire stations, the way that I see it, 41 square miles, 150,000 people served, and they're running, it looks like approaching 30,000 calls for service. And I come from what we understand, at least in the Bay Area of California, is a very busy fire department. That is a very, very busy department. And so what I would say is taking a look at, I know you all have had a standards of cover done, but maybe re-looking at a standards of cover survey, taking a look at a deep dive at it. Each station looks like it's not running just necessarily one apparatus, but it becomes taxing. And so if I could just speak broadly from what I see from the fire service in general, the way that I grew up in the fire service over the last 20 years, it was it was almost a sense of pride when you run so many calls for service, and running as many calls as South King is running right now. There is a sense of pride of that, but the flip side of that, what I've seen now as a fire chief, at least coming from my previous organization, there's probably an area where we need to look at how we do business a little differently. And I know that South King has definitely done that. It's for sure I can see for sure that it appears that there's a different way, a different model of doing that. But I would say in that first 100 days, first 6 months, is really trying to look at what we're doing, what calls we're running, as far as tiered responses and just different ways to responding to calls is in the fire service in general and the nation. We're dealing with different calls that can absolutely be responded to with different resources. But again, that's a collaboration effort. That's what the community wants to see. That comes from the Board of Commissioners. Dealing with labor, I guess, is the most general way that I can tell you. I have some ideas about it. But I think in general, that's the easiest way that I can tell you is that we probably need to look away at reducing responses on certain apparatus with certain firefighters and looking at coming up with creative new ways to spread the wealth, so we don't have such a large call volume, a large a burden upon our firefighters, is what I see with South King.
Thank you.
Fire departments, fire departments and law enforcement agencies in Seattle, excuse me, as well across the state, are finding it very difficult to attract qualified and diverse applicants for firefighter positions. Discuss your philosophy and techniques relating to recruitment and retention of personnel.
Yes, I may have mentioned it previously. When I took over as fire chief, we had about a 30% vacancy rate. And by the time I left, I think I had one firefighter vacancy at the time. And so what that comes to is it comes to inclusion with everybody. And that starts with, for where I came from, obviously it was city council to city management on the way down. Obviously this is different with the Board of Commissioners. But leadership is paramount. It really is. It's paramount. Is understanding what a good leader is they see things the way that it is today, but they see how it can be better. But not only just having that vision as a leader of the organization, as a fire chief coming in there, it's not good enough for me to see the vision, to see how it's going to get better. I need to get buy-in, and I need to get buy-in from everybody around. But once that buy-in happens, I have seen it. I've already seen it. I've already produced it. Like I said, I agree with you. Nationally, recruitment is down in the fire service. The police services doesn't concern me so much, but the fire service for sure is down. And what I was able to accomplish in my organization is simply you have sustainable leadership, you have a vision, you communicate that vision, you get buy-in, and you get buy-in from everybody that you can. And then you move forward. And I will tell you that it wasn't easy, but it was easier than what I thought, what I had witnessed from multiple fire chiefs that come through our organization. Once you have that leadership quality, that leadership capability, and the buy-in and the transparency, man, it came quick. It came quick. It did come quick. And the firefighters, the community, everybody becomes a recruiter at that point. And it was extremely successful for where I came from.
Another long one. What would be your position as to working in a collaborative capacity with the district's executive director? And do you feel that would hinder your ability to perform your supervisory role within the organization?
No, absolutely not. So I come from, the only thing I know is a manager council form of government. And so that's what I had to deal with all the time. To be honest with you, I don't know. I tried to do as much research as I could. I don't know if they come from a fire service background or emergency background, but be that as it may or as it may not, is absolutely not. I have been successful. To be honest with you, it has been trying at sometimes. Is when you have a boss that doesn't come from a fire service background or emergency background, the communication is paramount. It's just something that you have to maintain. It has to be consistent, and you have to build that trust. If that trust isn't there, if you show areas of mistrust or a misstep that you make, it just makes it that much more difficult. Is proving the fact that I'm a professional professional. I operate professionally. I operate in first and foremost in the interest of the community that I serve. I can work with any and everybody. And no, I don't see that being an impediment at all. And honestly, when I stepped into the role as a chief officer at a young age, I was honestly surprised how much you can learn from a civilian side of things. So if you do come from a different background, management background, executive background, I've dealt with a million city managers in the city that I came from, and all of them gave me a ton of different insight that I would not have gotten from a fire chief, to be honest with you, or a firefighter. So I welcome it, and it's not a problem for me. It has never been a problem for me.
Thank you.
What is the largest, you probably touched on this a little bit, but what is the largest fire department you have ever managed, and how does this department compare in size and geographic area?
Well, we're real close, real close. So I know you're operating out of 7 stations. We operate out of 7 stations. And so the square mileage of the department that I represented was 49 square miles. So I think we have you beat by 8. And, but as far as calls for service, from what I've read online, if that is accurate, 28 to 30,000 calls for service, that's 10,000 more for us. And we were the busiest by far in the county that I worked for. And so saying that, I come from and I grew up in the Bay Area. So the department that I work for is probably one of the most diverse cities, most diverse fire departments in the Bay Area. And so I have extensive experience in it. That's all I know. That's all I've ever grew up in. I worked for a private ambulance company in the same county. And so as far as size and call volume goes, yeah, it's real close. City staff, it looks like you have more administrative staff than that I have dealt with, which would be definitely welcome for me as well. And yeah, it's really close. I'm we were a $33 million budget, and yeah, it's one of the reasons that I applied for the interim position. To be honest with you, is it seems it's very familiar to what I'm dealing with as far as communities that are represented, calls that you're responding to. Like I said, I don't like to sit still. I want to be busy, and I want out of the state of California also.
Okay, thank you.
What do you look for in a job, and how does this job measure up?
Honestly, I'm being extremely selective. I'm a recent free agent, so I'm being really selective. To be honest with you, the state of Washington, I have family in Seattle. So what I'm looking for is a place that is busy, and you, by no stretch of the imagination, are a very busy district. And so that's first and foremost. That's what I understand. That's what I get. I love the operational side of being a fire chief. On the management side of things, people really love to hear, certain organizations, they love to hear about a manager as a fire chief. What have you done as a management side of things? What I know, coming from a busy organization, firefighters respect fire chiefs that are players. And that's it's almost like a football analogy, is players can recognize players. You could be the best coach in the world, but if you haven't played the game, you haven't been in the game, it doesn't mean that anybody's going to play for you. And so that is a big factor to me, is this is a busy organization. The other thing is that I come from a council management style, and I can tell you it is as much as I love the city that I came from, it is definitely an uphill battle, and that's nobody's fault. It's just it's the style of government. As a city manager and a city council, you are pulled a million different ways from the fire service. And in California specifically, the police department is where the focus is right now, and I don't disagree with it. But the fact that I would be able to work for a fire commission that's specifically focused in on the fire service really makes me excited, for sure. Not only that, is understanding the community that you represent is supportive of the fire department. And obviously with what you have recently passed with, I believe it was 64%, it's just indicative of the fact that the community is supportive of the fire department. Everything that I see that you're doing on social media, it's just really exciting. You've got a big department, you've got a growing department, And growth mindset is what I'm looking for. It's clearly with the recent passage that everybody seems to be in lockstep in the same direction. And that comes from fire administration, the board of the commissioners, and the firefighters, and all of that is the labor organization. And that just it really made me excited as I read it. To be honest with you, I'm a young fire chief, and interim is, makes me a little nervous. But once I read exactly what South King is going through, it is a perfect fit for me.
Thank you.
Describe what approaches you have used to promote diversity in your previous positions and the results of those approaches.
Again, it comes from leadership. Like I said, I come from probably one of the most diverse communities in the Bay Area. As far as diversity goes, that is what we have included. And that is stepping outside of, like I'd mentioned before, what was extremely beneficial to me is talking to other department heads. I would talk to the police chief, the HR director, finance, economic development, public works, the vast array of knowledge that was out there as far as diversity and inclusion and what the steps were. Not only that, as you reach out to local labor union as well, it is just is expanding on what you believe and reaching out to what everybody else believes. But to be honest with you, once we got the morale side of things, once everybody understood, like, oh, I want to be a Vallejo firefighter, that in itself. Now that's going out to, we went to the career fairs, we did all of that stuff. We reached out to the military, we have local military bases, all of that. That was all well and good, but I'm telling you, once I fixed the morale side of the department that I grew up in, everybody on the ambulance, that was a recruiting tool in itself. They could see it, they hear it from the firefighters, they see it from the community. The word of mouth that traveled was phenomenal. I really was. I was pleasantly surprised for sure. I remember sitting back thinking, oh, we could have had this over the last 10 years. And it really just comes down to creating that culture. Once you create that culture of where people want to work, everything else falls in line, and you get extremely qualified applicants that are not only qualified but loyal to your organization.
Describe what approaches you have used to work more closely with the business community and the results that you have achieved.
Yes, the fun part of being the fire chief. Yeah, so I tell the firefighters is 50%, a good fire chief, in my opinion, 50% in the fire stations, 50% in the community. It's just that simple. And so when you get out to a business community, I'm so excited about being a firefighter. I'm probably I feel like, such a nerd when it comes down to it, as I really love the profession. So it's so easy for me to get out into a business community and explain exactly what we're doing, what we're trying to do for the community, what we want to do for the community. And not only that, is what is the business community looking for us? What do you want from your firefighters? How can we better serve the business community? And so that is literally me not turning down any event, anything that we can get out there, publicizing coffee with the fire chief. We get stuff out there. But just publicizing out there that I want to be the face of the fire department for sure as the fire chief, and we want our firefighters to be out there as best that we can as well. Obviously, when you're running so many calls for service, it's not so easy. But getting out in the business community, being a part of any social club or just club in general in the business community is something that I absolutely am a huge fan of. And so I was a part of a board in it was a board comprised of local leadership, and it was called Leadership Vallejo essentially. And that's what it was, is trying to inspire local businesses to get local business leaders to come to be a part of a board that was able to envision how we see the future of the city that I worked for. And so I love every minute of it. Any chance that I get to promote the fire service in general, I'm excited about. And so, yeah.
Kind of similar to the last one, but different. Describe what approaches you've used to work more closely with neighborhoods or homeowners associations and the results you've achieved.
Yes, so that in itself too is I probably tripled our responses to our community involvement when I became fire chief. And one thing that I understood, because again, like I said, players recognize players. I loved every second of being out in the community as a firefighter, whether I was a firefighter, a captain, a battalion chief, every second of it. That's exactly what we are here to do. And firefighters inherently love to serve. And so that's what we do. And so getting involved in those neighborhood and associations is extremely beneficial. And what I would say is as much time as we can take from being away from emergency services and keeping the firefighters' workload in balance. But also the other thing that I really recognize as a fire chief is taking civilian staff was beneficial, highly beneficial. So we would have association meetings, community association meetings that the firefighters would attend. We would send our fire engines or local fire engines or what have you. And then I started to switch it up is where we would send civilian staff as well. So we'd have fire prevention out there. Obviously, that's a huge fan favorite just for questions in general. But not only that is having civilian staff. So having civilian staff that was administrative managers, my executive secretaries, people from finance, getting out there and just mixing in with the community, becoming part of the community, feeling more a part of the community. It's an absolute game changer. And it's something that I'm sure South King is doing right now, but it's something that I would highly recommend that is far involved as we possibly can be in the community that honestly puts the trust in us, the better it is for the organization.
Thank you.
Thank you. A female firefighter complains to you that a male officer has made unwanted sexual advances. How would you handle the situation?
Yeah, that's a situation that needs to be addressed immediately. And so going through the proper chain of command, dealing with our attorneys, human resources, anybody immediately. That's something that needs to be investigated immediately. And I have actually gone through this process before, and it's something that is highly sensitive and something that needs to be dealt with immediately. And going through the process, and it's the easiest way that I can to explain it to you is having an investigation done immediately.
Thank you.
An employee under your supervision does not get along with anyone. How would you handle this situation?
Yes, welcome to the world of the fire service. So yes, they are there. And so coming down to communication and transparency, seeing what the issue is, right, is if somebody is not getting along with anybody, to be honest with you, in the fire service, I find that hard to believe. There's normally somebody that gets along with somebody somewhere. But getting down to exactly what the nature of the issue is just diving in to see what the employee has, talking to the employee, talking to the individuals. I assume performance evaluations exist. You would see some sort of a track record somewhere along the line of hopefully what's correctable behavior. And as far as it's a kind of a general sense of what it means to not get along with somebody. We're all not going to get along with somebody. We all come from different backgrounds, and being in the fire service, when you're in the fire station with people for, hours and hours at a time, it's just that's the nature of what it is. It's taking a look at what levels that we're looking at. Is it affecting work performance? Is it affecting anything that's outside of the bounds of where we need to be concerned? Does discipline need to be enacted? Anything like that is what I would say is, I know it's a relatively general response, but yes, that's the best way that I can explain it is looking at the situation and evaluating those individually.
You have to give a performance evaluation of an employee. How do you approach that?
A performance evaluation is taking a look at the entire aspect of an employee. So having specific performance evaluations that I know that what we've dealt with in the past is these are vetted through proper channels. That's HR, fire administration, the labor organization, going through an absolute performance evaluation. But it's looking at it in its entirety and just going through the steps of the evaluation itself. Typically, from what I'm used to, fire chiefs are not overly involved in employee evaluations unless it comes to their direct subordinates, but supervising them and seeing what their subordinates and so have you down the line. But I think having the performance evaluation itself being vetted is something that alleviates a lot of issues. And I've seen it done the other way where it's just, it's kind of shoved down the throats of the employees and not necessarily agreed with, and it just makes it more problematic. But if the performance evaluation is something that it comes at your direction from the board of commissioners through fire administration, through the labor organization, everybody understands it. They're typically great tools, I would say, is you using these for tools for success, not for punishment.
Okay. What are some of the major trends that would be impacting the fire service over the next decade? And how well do you think South King Fire is positioned to address any trends that may impact us?
Trends for sure that I talked to you about is increasing call volume. That is the nature of what is impacting the fire service the most. Is you have a ton of increased call volume. You have a recruitment and retention issue nationwide, and that it just becomes a snowball effect in itself. We're trying to limit the exposure, I guess, is what I would say. It's very tough when you're running, 17, 18 calls in a 24-hour shift, 12-hour shift, or whatever it is. And then we're wondering why we can't recruit and retain individuals. So that is something that is on the forefront for sure. Firefighter mental health has been on the forefront, as it should be, for the last, 5 to 10 years. And that's something that needs to get out and addressed. It's almost like the prevention side of things. And so what we can talk about, what we learned from, is specifically in the state that I come from Southern California, and not to point fingers, is the preventative side of things on the fire service is just as important as the preventative side of things in the health industry. The more that we can prevent having these issues come to fruition, it's just more beneficial to everybody. So mobile integrated health is something that I see that South King has done. And this is something that the fire service is getting out ahead of, and something that I think is extremely beneficial for sure. And it's happening in not just Washington, but California, everywhere. Is staying progressive, staying innovative, is understanding that we need to change, and we need to change for the positive. So these are the things that I see coming forward, and that goes down to is specific as tiered responses, which I know that you all are doing, a lot of people are doing in the fire service, but really diving into what that looks like. Is what type of responses are we sending? What type of apparatus are we sending? Is we get into a place where it all just, and I don't mean to be pessimistic, but it did snowball for us over the last 10 years. Is now it takes you 2 to 4 years to get a piece of apparatus that's absolutely pivotal through the door. That is crazy. That is not how I grew up. It's not what I'm used to. But understanding that means that, does that mean that we are sending, a tractor drawn aerial to 2,500 calls a year? As I understand, there's a way to potentially mitigate some of these risks, and understanding that is, it's just just like in life, you got to constantly adapt, you got to evolve, you got to revisit, you got to redefine. And I think this time in the fire service, what I've seen from fire service leaders, it's very impressive of what innovation is out there, and just to stay on the forefront like South King is doing. Just to keep doing that in the future is I will never reject any idea, as crazy as they may seem. I enjoy all of them.
Okay, thank you. Well, that's going to end our open session here. So we're going to go into executive session. No more questions. So the board convened executive session for interim fire chief interviews pursuant to RCW 42.30.1101G to evaluate the qualification of the applicant for public employment or to review the performance of a public employee. However, subject to RCW 42.30.140, discussion by governing body of salaries, wages, and other conditions of employment to be generally applied within the agency shall occur in a meeting open to the public. And when a governing body elects to take final action hiring, setting the salary of an individual employee or class employees, or discharging or disciplining an employee, that action shall be taken in a meeting open to the public. Action may or may not be taken after executive session. So joining the board executive session will be Executive Director Ganem, Executive Secretary Perry, and Legal Counsel. So at this time, we will recess for 2 minutes to get everyone transferred into the executive session. We anticipate executive session lasts for 30 minutes. At the end of executive session, we'll take 2 minutes recess to get everyone transferred back over to a special meeting.